New Jersey filing a lawsuit to try to stop New York from charging big tolls to get into Midtown Manhattan. The state is suing the Federal Highway Administration over its approval of New York's congestion pricing scheme. That plan could charge drivers up to $23 per trip to enter Manhattan below 60th Street. That's after you already pay some pretty exorbitant tolls to go through a tunnel or a bridge to get there. Supporters say that it would help alleviate traffic and raise money for mass transit. Challengers say that it violates environmental laws. Joining us right now is Congressman Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey. You can guess which side of this debate he's on. Congressman Gottheimer, this has been something that's been talked about for years, but it really stepped into high gear recently, and now New York State is planning to have this put into effect, I would say, as early as the spring. The lawsuit that New Jersey has brought goes after not the MTA in this case, but the Federal Highway Administration. You want to explain the legal theory here?
Sure. Hey, Becky, good to see you. So basically, pretty simply, the federal government rubber stamped a submission from the MTA, which is the mass transit system in New York, who's going to be implementing the congestion tax, the $23 a day you mentioned. And what they did is the MTA has to actually submit something to the government saying, here's our application. In the report, the MTA admitted it's going to have their congestion tax will have a huge environmental impact, leading to massive amounts of cancer-causing pollution in northern New Jersey and the outer boroughs, because you'll have a lot more truck shifting there with their new congestion tax and more cars backed up at the Lincoln and the Holland tunnels going into New York. And for some reason, which we can't figure out, the federal government just rubber stamped their application, despite the fact that literally admits it's going to give off things like formaldehyde increase at the GW Bridge with all the trucks, which leads to cancer in children and families, and in the outer boroughs. So basically, this lawsuit says to the federal government, we believe you violated in a series of environmental laws by approving this. You should reconsider the application.
How long do you think that this will slow this down? Like, who knows what the courts eventually rule, but this is going to take a little longer.
Well, really, it should take longer, right? I mean, this is a significant impact. We know, and one of the things I want to understand is how could they say go ahead to the MTA's proposal? Put aside the fact, Becky, that we've talked about this, the $23 a day, $5,000 a year new congestion tax you're putting on nurses and restaurant workers and electricians who've got to commute into New York City every day on top of the tolls and the parking they already pay. This is just literally the environmental piece. It's having a huge negative impact on the environment. It really deserves to have a full, thorough review before you start having all these trucks backed up at the GW Bridge and the outer boroughs of New York. And by the way, I should add, the MTA in New York, it knows that what they're doing will actually hurt the environment. They've already decided to commit to the Bronx $130 million for a new asthma center and for other environmental mitigation if this thing goes ahead, right? But zero for Jersey, right? This is just a big cash grab for the mismanaged MTA.
You know, Vito Fossella, who is the Staten Island Borough president, is opposed to this, too. I know Staten Island is now joining in this lawsuit, but he says that in their lawsuit, they're going to go after the MTA directly. Why didn't New Jersey do that?
Well, the governor of Jersey said last week that that's on the table. They're waiting for the MTA to set the price of what this congestion tax will be. They haven't put the formal price out. They're meeting right now in a private session of just MTA folks to decide what that tax should be on Jersey and commuters and others from the outer boroughs and of course, Westchester and Staten Island and other places.
Congressman, I guess what I don't understand is why New York doesn't understand that this could be detrimental to New York, just in terms of what it means for New Jerseyans who are going to come in. If you look at what's happened with New Jersey Transit, there's still 75% of the pre-COVID levels of people who used to be taking the bus system into New York from New Jersey have not returned. Cars have actually come back up. So the people who are coming back to work here, spending more time here, are coming by cars. What happens if those people say, forget it, we're not coming back anymore? That hasn't been clearly explained to me.
You're spot on. I mean, this is why the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce and other groups in New York City are against this, and Broadway is against this, for the simple reason that if you're trying to get people back to work, you're trying to get people back shopping in New York from Jersey, the idea that you whack them with another $23 to make the trip. So, you know, that's $17 to take the bridge, $23 for this new congestion tax, plus parking, plus gas. You're talking about $100 before you even get a cup of coffee.
Congressman, I'm sympathetic, though I struggle. I'm a New Yorker. I live in Manhattan, and I'm struggling with what to do long term about both the traffic issue and the economics of public transport. Right? I mean, that is the ultimate question, and the fundamental question is, how do you deal with the economics of it? How do you deal with the traffic? How do you deal with all of these things? So I'm also sympathetic. I want to have as many people in the city as possible from an economic perspective. So I get what you're saying and what Becky's saying. I also understand if you're from Jersey and you want to come to the city, it's better to make it cheaper rather than more expensive. But in certain cases, maybe you need to make it more expensive. What would you do if you were the governor of the state of New York, or perhaps the mayor of New York City, and what you think the right answer is for everybody?
Well, you're totally right that we need to invest more in mass transit, which I think is the right point here, right? And I fought very hard and helped get passed and write the infrastructure bill in Congress, right, which includes significant investment in mass transit. The federal government gives $2 billion a year to the MTA to help support mass transit, and I think that's the right thing to do to support it. But you don't turn when you have a problem like the MTA has, which really is a mismanaged mess, right? A judge called it an orgy of overtime.
It's intractable, and it's terrible, and it's depressing in all ways. Right.
So deal with what I would do is, if you're in New York, first of all, solve your problem. Fix the MTA, actually do the right thing, clean it up, and do that, right? Handle your own problems, right? New Jersey, we're trying to invest in our mass transit. We don't look to New York and say, oh, we got a problem here, you should fix it. So that's one. Two, New York has a huge budget, obviously, annually. They just gave, $600 million or more to build the Buffalo Bills Stadium, right? Maybe take that money and put it in investing your mass transit instead of spending money on things like that, even though they're great, but you got to invest in the things that are most important first. So I'd clean up my own mess. In terms of mass transit in Jersey, listen, we just don't have all the options that you'd want for mass transit right now. We're building them out. But right now, people like a nurse has to commute in the morning. There are fewer mass transit options right now than there were before the pandemic in New Jersey to New York because traffic's down. So a lot of people, if you're the restaurant worker, you're an Uber driver, you have to drive. Turning around and whacking those people with nothing more than a big cash grab from the MTA to solve their problems isn't the right answer.